When people hear my accent and they look at me, there's an intrigue there. I probably am owed royalties from it. They bless themselves when they hear my name. Oh, not him. You're good enough. You don't need a teacher. You don't need somebody to give you value. You already have it.
So, Kevin, you've had an incredibly varied working life.
Yes.
I won't go into all of it because you've done a lot. But is there a common thread to the type of careers that you've had?
There is a common thread, and it's creativity. When I was a kid, I think I learned very early on, at the age of 12 and a half, the power of being able to escape the world through creativity for a period of time. And I had a very difficult childhood, so I needed some way of finding a portal into a place which wasn't lonely, wasn't sad. And when I started to paint, that became the place I went to, where to put, I'd almost describe it like this, to put the train back on tracks. You know, in life we sometimes can drift a bit as to our purpose. But for me, as long as I was being creative, it felt right. And it started out with, my mum used to make wreaths and arranging flowers, and I remember being super interested in that. And then I started to cook. I was a chef for a while on a fishing boat, and I was a chef for a couple of years. Again, creative. I always painted, but I didn't realise, because I come from Killybegs, and I'd never been to an art gallery, never seen an exhibition. There was one scary painting in our house of an old Scottish guy with a dead deer on the back of a horse with 2 arrows in it. And I used to be intrigued by that, but that was the only painting I ever saw. But what I did realise very quickly for myself was that whatever I was doing, if I was being creative, I was making something to share with people. So you cook a meal, you share the meal. You make a painting, you share the painting. And when I moved on into writing music, I wrote songs for Bob Geldof and Boney M. That again was a creative process which involved sharing. And I think I was lucky very early on to realise the power of the frequency of creativity, because whatever I did, as long as it was creative, it made me feel good and it made other people feel good.
Yeah. Are you still collecting royalties for those songs?
Do you know, the funny thing about Boney M was I got £750 when I wrote that song. I wrote it with Pete Brigette from the Boomtown Rats. And we got 750 quid, and I tried several times over the years to see where's the money, because you can see it on YouTube, it's on albums. But to be honest with you, the deals they get you to sign when you're a penniless musician are scandalous. And technically you sign away your life. So I probably am owed royalties from it, but getting together a legal representative to do that, to be honest with you, at the time I was just completely honoured to be putting words into the mouth of the only black band I'd ever seen in Donegal.
Totally. I would have paid them.
Oh, 100%. And in a way, for me, the triumph was writing the perfect song for them that they all absolutely loved, including the dancer guy. There was a part for him in the song. And it really was, that achievement, that adventure was wonderful. So I think it was never about money. I think this is a mistake, funny enough, people make if you are creative and talented in some way, that money is the object. It never is. The object is to get better, no matter what you do. And I think for me, where I'm more money orientated, I would have probably gone after them. I'd probably also have gone after Father Ted creators, because I had one line in Father Ted. I got a couple of quid I think I got £1,000 for the one line, and for a year I received a couple hundred quid royalties, never another penny. So, you know, again, if I was more money orientated, I'd be lawyering up and that. But to be part of such an incredible, cultural, iconic show was in itself, reward.
Yeah. You mentioned your mum there. Your adoptive father for a time was an inventor.
Yeah, he was a full-time inventor, a marine electronics engineer, incredibly clever man from Drogheda, Paddy Sharkey, and he created things out of electronics. One of the things was a fish catcher, which you could bring to the side of a river, put it in the river, or put the plates in the river, and all the fish between the plates upriver and where you were, when you pressed the button, it would electrify the water, and all the salmon would just float belly up to the top of the water, and you could pick them up. But the minute you took them out of the water, they were absolutely fine. So he then went on and created a tox alert, because he discovered that the most sensitive thing on the planet to pollution was the gills of a trout. So they'd put this trout by the river, upstream, and the water from the river would go through the trout's tank, and they monitored the trout. And the minute a tiny bit of pollution entered the water, the trout would go crazy. So they'd shut down the water supply. So he was a genius. He really was. And I learned, I think, from him that if something doesn't exist, you can invent it, you can create it. And that's why I love what I do with art.
Yeah, yeah. So you were put back into care as a 12-year-old, and there was a woman there who introduced you to art. Is that correct?
Yes, Susan Gannon was her name, and it was very traumatic. And when you're an adopted child, the only thing that really matters is fitting in. And you take a long time to fit in. When I was 3.5, I remember I would never smile in photographs because I was very unhappy in the adopted home. But I also got it into my head at that age that if I ever smiled in a photograph, my real mother might see it, think I was happy and wouldn't come and get me. Wow. So I used to have these constant arguments with Paddy Sharkey about he wanted me to smile in photographs. And even at 3.5, I just couldn't betray myself and think, no, if she thinks I'm happy, she won't come and rescue me, because it was a very difficult upbringing with the Sharkies. So I think, when I look back at it, Susan Gannon, when I was in the home, I was there for about 6 weeks, and she came in one day and she said to me, "You've been here for 6 weeks and you haven't stopped crying." She said, "I brought you in some paints and some canvas. I just thought it might cheer you up." So that evening I made a painting. And when I finished it, I had this amazing light bulb moment where I thought, I wasn't sad for 25 minutes. I wasn't lonely for 25 minutes. So for all of my adult life, I painted, but I didn't realize the value of art. I had no reference for what it was worth, who I didn't even know anybody who owned art or bought art. So for me, it gave me an escape. It was like a portal into a safe place, which was free of sadness. And that painting, I still have a photograph of it somewhere, but I painted for years. I used to throw them away because I didn't, as I said, I didn't understand. For me, the value was in the escape, not in the finished product. And then I met Adi Antigua, who was this art teacher who came to dinner one time in London, and he saw one by accident, because I used to hide them when people came around the house, because I'd been a fisherman, and you tell people you're an artist, and be like, yeah, sure you are. So I was a little bit embarrassed because it was just my expression. It wasn't based on lessons. It wasn't based on technique. It was just what I thought looked good. And he got all excited and asked me, did I have any other paintings? And I said, I do. He took them out and he looked at them and he kept saying, wow, wow. And I said, why do you say wow? He said, well, I teach people technique every day. He said, I can't teach them to do this. This has nothing to do with technique. This is just pure expression. I said, oh. And he said to me, you could sell these. And I was like, really? That's when he got my ears. And he said to me, he said, you know what? He said, you're a good singer. He said, but you're a fucking great artist. You've got to be an artist. And that was 10,500 paintings ago. So that guy saw something that I had no notion about. So the last 30 years have been almost all entirely selling my work, making work and selling it. And I've had galleries in Mayfair, in London, Barcelona, in Ibiza, because as a self-taught artist, the establishment don't really want to entertain you because they want you to go to school, learn to paint like everybody else, and then give your work to a gallery. But that's the dying way. That doesn't work anymore because I get to meet the clients. I get to see their homes. They send me photographs, say, we've got this wall, we were thinking of a picture. Maybe you could Photoshop some suggestions for us. We bring the paintings to the house for them. I mean, it's a business, but it's a business that art students are not told about. Their heads are full of dead painters and copying other people's style. And in a way, it's a shame because the teachers really should pay more attention to what do I do once I've finished a painting? How do I take it from being a hobby and make it into a living? And unfortunately, the teachers seem to be more interested in the philosophy of art. I got asked by the Sunday Times in the UK last year, they asked me about the history of art. And I was honest. I said, I don't really care about the history of art. You wouldn't get me at an exhibition. I don't go to galleries or museums, but I love to make things. And to bring beauty into the world in any sense is a really good frequency to live your life because you're leaving behind you all these lovely moments of beauty. And people, Jesus, I'm never not humbled by people who come and they say, we've been married for 30 years and we want you to do a portrait of our family in your style to mark our 30 years. And you think, oh my God, these people, and many of them could buy anything, but it's such an honor that they decide no, we want one of your paintings. And it always moves me because I know there's a lot of talented artists in the world. But the business of art is the bit that's missing. I have to be a shopkeeper for half the week. I can't be an artist every day because nobody can do what I do. And now I have the gallery in Dawson Street. I am opening in Dalkey on the 1st of October, and I have the gallery in Quinta do Lago in Faro in Portugal. So finally I have outlets for my incredible prolific production of beautiful pieces of art. It's wonderful.
But let's go right back. So you're saying 10,000 odd canvases later, but let's go back to that first canvas. Can you remember who you sold your first painting to?
Yes, I do. A lovely English lady in a wheelchair in Mount Charles in Donegal. We had an exhibition in this old tannery. It was a beautiful old building. And 500 people came. None of them took their coats off. They drank everything they had, and then they drove off. I remember this English policeman saying to me, they're getting in their cars and they're drunk. I said, well, you see buses or taxis? This is rural Ireland. But she bought the first one, I think, for €250. And it was lovely because, you know, without customers, it is a hobby.
Yes. Yes, yeah. And then tell me more. So then how did you put that price on it, first of all? And then how did you go on to define, how did you go on then to value your art?
Well, it's funny, it's a good question, that because at the time that I put that price on it, I was still operating from a point of €250, that's not bad. But I was thinking in terms of what I call real people prices. In other words, to me, €250 at that stage was €250. But I didn't understand then what I do understand now, which is that art lovers, by and large, tend to be relatively well off, or at least aspire to be. They're on the ladder. So having to price the work in the beginning was easy enough because I was doing it with real world prices. But as I progressed and as I became more successful, I found that the clients that were buying my work were becoming wealthy. The higher the prices went, the more wealthy the clients were. And when you're an artist, if you are with real people prices, if there's a downturn, then all your customers are affected. But you pass a certain peak, whereas your customers are not affected by an economic downturn. So your job is producing beautiful artwork for wealthy people. And that understanding helped me to bring the price of the work up. About 11 years ago, when I started selling 160 by 160s paintings, which are quite big, I was selling them for between 2,500 3,000 on Merrion Square on the railings. I sell those now for between 22 and 23,000, which is over 1,000% increase, which is unheard of. You know, it's also unheard of for any artist to even paint 10,000 paintings, never mind sell them. But because I am not part of the establishment, they bless themselves when they hear my name. Oh, not him. Because to them, what I do is groundbreaking, and not in a good way for them, because they've always been the ones to tell you if you're good enough. And I didn't need their praise, because my customers told me that I was good enough. And that's a wonderful place to get to when you know that people love what you do. And when I paint now, I know every painting is valuable. Whereas when I started, I didn't have that understanding at all.
Why do you think people love your art? What do you think? Is it
Honestly,
the joyousness, or what?
Honestly, when Addy Antigua, that guy, told me that I should be an artist, I went to look at Picasso, Van Gogh, and a couple of the other big artists, because I was curious to see, would I see something that was in common, that they had in common? Why were they so, not just successful, but why after all these years were they still talked about? And I went and looked at the work, and I honestly felt that there was an energy to the work. And I guess because of what I went through in life, in the beginning it was very, very difficult, but I needed a lot of healing to get to where I am today, because the trauma of a difficult childhood, it doesn't go away. It might recede into the background, but there's clues in everything, in your relationships and how you react to the dark. And I think when I saw the energy that was in their work, I thought, wow, energy is important. And I think the reason people love my work is that I healed through art. And I think when they see the painting, they don't just see it, they feel it. And I see people, I've had people come into the gallery and stand there crying in front of a painting. At first you're a bit like, are you okay? I say, I don't know, just something about this painting really moves me. So I've seen thousands of people go, oh, I want to look at that painting for the rest of my life. And when I die, I'm going to leave it to my favourite kid. And they've told me this, but you also see it in them. They feel the work, or they feel something from it. Because when you're an artist, it's a very solitary thing to do. You're on your own. And you don't paint a painting and show it to somebody and say, what do you think? You don't paint a painting and stand around looking at it. You just move on to the next painting. So watching people react to your work is huge, fascinating, because it's like I don't have kids, but it'd be like bringing out, very well-behaved, well-dressed kids where people go, oh, they're lovely children. Because to me, I wouldn't show them the art if I didn't value it and think it was beautiful.
Yes.
So the value I put on the work increases and increases, because that was always my intention. Because why not? Why not go the whole way? Why stop? Why settle for second place?
Yeah.
And while the art world would be reluctant to give me the credit I'm due, I don't need it from them. The customers are all the praise I need, and they praise you by buying your work.
Yeah. Has the value that you put in yourself risen in tandem with that? I sometimes think, I think sometimes you need to really value yourself to go out and go out and demand a higher salary or a higher rate.
The reason I'm laughing at that is I recently made contact with a lovely lady, Fanula Dolan is her name, and when I was in the orphanage, when they sent me back into the care system at 12 and a half, I was in the care system till I was 16, and this lovely woman worked in one of the homes, and she was so kind to me, but she told me this story. She said she used to bring me out for the day trip because the Sharkies wouldn't come and see me while I was in the care system. They just didn't want anything to do with me. And she said to me one day, well, I thought we might go and get an ice cream. So I said, oh, lovely. I said, I know just the place. So I put on my little suit. We got in the car and I directed her, according to her, into Switzer's on Grafton Street. She said, I didn't even know there was a restaurant in the basement there. She said, but you marched in 12 and a half years old and you sat down and you ordered a steak and I told you couldn't have a glass of wine. She said, but I was astounded that you seemed to know not just where it was, but that you were absolutely comfortable in these surroundings ordering yourself a steak. And I think the value I always had in myself, that was the value I needed to place on myself because I was so badly treated as a child and somebody had to value me, and I wasn't being valued by my family. I wasn't being valued in any way lovingly. So I think for me to survive it, I had to have faith that I was worth more than I was being told. My mother said to me one day, she said, I watched you walking down that road with your head held high. What have you got to hold your head high about? And I see those little things because without my own faith in myself, without my own kindness and belief in myself, I would have been lost. I had to believe that I was worth more than I was being told. And that has set me off on a path where I like nice things, I like luxury things, but I'm the worst saver, I'm the worst, I'm an artist who spends money that he makes. One of the questions that I laughed at when I read of yours was about owning things. I don't own anything. I never bought property. I don't have a pension. I don't have a big nest of savings. I've always just put the money I've made back into my career. And I've done that by painting, by getting better, by opening galleries. They don't always work out. You don't know till you try. But ultimately, I reinvested everything in myself. And it proves to me that owning things, what's that guy, Klaus Schwab? He says, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. Well, I own nothing and I am happy.
Yeah.
And that I think is why I have friends who've got mortgages and troubles with this. And I think, wow, thank God I wasn't paying attention in school. I was daydreaming. My friends told me I used to be down the back of the class practicing my autograph for when I was famous.
No way.
So I had ideas above my station, I think that's what they'd say.
Yeah. Tell me about the Celtic Tiger, because you're particularly prolific during that period. There was a lot of money around.
Yes.
A lot of big clients. Can you tell me about that time for you?
Well, I came back from London then, and I couldn't believe it. There was like money everywhere. They offered me, I think I had 5 credit cards. Now, offering me a credit card was probably a really bad idea because to me, my question was, what's the limit? And how quickly can I get there?
Yeah.
Paying it back, that really wasn't in the equation at all.
Yeah.
But when they gave me all these credit cards, I thought, oh my God, if they're giving me bloody credit cards, there must be something wrong here.
They were giving them out at the airport.
I know.
Off you went, just pass through, grab
Here's
a credit card.
And you're like, oh, thanks very much. Now, I understand some people would be, what's the word, cautious and, be thinking about the repayments. I was just thinking, this is fabulous free money. So I got asked by a charity to do, they give us all these, a life-size cow. And they said, we would like you to paint one. And I just looked at them and I thought, painting the cow, there must be something I can do that's a bit more reflective of the times we're living in. So I came up with this idea to cover the cow in cash, in real cash. But actually, in the first instance, I was going to use photocopied cash. So I got 50s, 20s, 10s and 5s, and I photocopied them, cut them up, got them all ready, announced to the media that I was going to cover this cow in cash and that I was going to call it moolah, which is another word for money. But they got all excited. Can we get a photograph of the cow? And so I got the wallpaper paste and I got the notes and I started to dip it into the wallpaper paste to put on the cow, and all the colours just ran off. So I was like, oh, shit. And they're on the phone going, when can we see this cow? And I'm like, oh, so I realised I'm going to have to put real money on it. So I had, I think, about £5,000 at the time, and I thought, well, I got to do something. But that only covered half of the cow's backside. Yeah. So I got back onto the charity. I explained to them that it was going to cost a bit more than that. They gave me 13 grand. So I put that on the cow, and we put real money on it. It was absolutely beautiful. I varnished it then, signed it, and it was a huge success because, first of all, most people went, oh, my God, that's a terrible waste of money. But my point as an artist was trying to say, we're awash with cash here. What's going on? You know, so moolah is another word for money, as I said. But I wanted to make a statement about the craziness that was going on. There was just money everywhere, and there didn't seem to be any escape hatch. You know, people were just spending. So moolah, funny enough, they put it. They went to auction it on the night of the auction, and just before the auction, the people came and said, "I'm sorry, you can't sell that. It's cash. You're not allowed to sell cash."
What?
Yeah, I know. So they couldn't auction it. And now moolah's disappeared. And I'm very, very keen. I'm offering a reward, a 10 grand painting to anybody who can locate moolah, because it was a beautiful sculpture. And it was also, you wouldn't do it now, but at that time, you kind of feel sometimes as an artist that it is important to reflect what you're experiencing, what you're seeing in the world. You know, I did one recently, which was an Arab woman holding a baby. And there were guns all around her, and each gun had the flag of the different countries that are supplying the bullets. And the title of it was We Buy the Bullets. And as an artist, I felt I had to say something. And I think I've always been a bit passionate about fairness. And I don't, maybe when you're treated unfairly as a child, you get a very clean sense of what's fair. So that sort of always was the reason I spoke out about anything, was because I felt an imbalance. And I felt as a creative person, it was a good idea to be able to articulate what you think.
And then getting back to the Celtic Tiger, was there any enormous orders where you were kind of painting through the night? Well,
no, the funny thing is I had a gallery in Francis Street, and what I remember about the Celtic Tiger years was that there was a walkway that went down into the gallery. It was like a ramp, and every week there were paintings lining both sides that were sold, that had to be delivered or collected or paid for. And it was like this, I mean, again, the prices were starting to go up. And I was as surprised as anybody that I was achieving those prices, because as my reputation grew, so did people's interest. And they matched my ability to produce work, you know, especially commission pieces where people have an idea already what they want. They look at your work and they'll say, we'd like that, but maybe with a different coloured background. And I love that, the challenge of that, because it's lovely to get it just right. So they love the painting. But there was a huge, I mean, I was busy. And then one day I said to somebody, is there a blockage at the top of the road? Because nobody came down the street. And we were like, all the galleries were all looking, what's going on? It was the crash. And I had 126 paintings in the gallery.
Was it really that
on the nose? Oh, I swear, it was literally
it was
overnight. We thought there was a blockage at the top of the road.
That
it was
is
like,
wild.
And I'm sure if I'd listened to more media, that would have been to announce that the crash had happened. And I was sitting there with 126 paintings thinking, what the hell am I going to do with 126 paintings? So I put, against the wishes of all the other galleries, I put a big sign in the window that said, any painting you want, 500 quid. And 6 weeks it took me to sell all of those paintings. And people said, oh, you shouldn't do that. But when you're an artist and that's your bread and butter, you don't have the option to go home to Kleiny and have mummy and daddy, you know, feed you soup and look after you. You're on the street. So for me, it was the challenge of making, again, the art of selling art. Now I wouldn't do that. But at that period in time, it was that or go under, because an artist all your money is in the canvas, in the studio, in the paint, in the varnish, all of that is where your money goes. So you need to return that. That's again the business of selling art, because without that, it really, literally is a hobby, and you're not going to survive on that.
I've read before that you had made 5 million up to that point, and then you ended up homeless.
Yes, I made very close to 5 million, but it sounds like a lot of money to people, but when you're investing it in opening a gallery here, or doing radio ads there, or doing Irish art reviews ads, I suppose the best way to describe it is that I felt that I was the next big thing in the world of art because of the originality of what I do and because of the success of what I do. So it wasn't risky for me to reinvest. Now, in those years, I stayed in the George V in Paris. I went to New York first class. I really had a great time spending that money. I loved it, but I spent it with the faith that there'd be more money. I was never going to sit on a suitcase full of money out of fear. And I think being an artist, sometimes you have to challenge the universe and have belief and faith that it's going to be even better. I think a lot of people, and this is one of the things about painting, to paint a picture, you need to be in the present moment. You can't paint in the past. And when you're painting, you're not thinking about the past. You're not worried about the future, but you're very present. And I think that key for me was the most important thing, because when I'm present, anything's possible. That's why I like driving, because you have to be in the moment. And I think maybe because of my background, I needed to find something that didn't drag me into the past or have me worried about the future. So, it was extraordinary. And I went to Japan, I went to Thailand. I went all around the world, and I guess it was the same little kid who went to the steak in the basement in Switzerland, in that I loved quality. But having spent it all and ended up homeless, that's something not a lot of people experience. And the great thing about that was, once you go broke and homeless, you realise life still goes on. I went on the dole for a little while, and I ate, and my dogs ate, and it was okay. I didn't have money to buy Joe Malone candles at that point. I didn't have the luxury of, really good bed linen at that point. But the lesson for me was that life, money is temporary. Life is temporary. Yeah. You can't bring it with you. I met a man, he came into the gallery about a year or two ago, and he said to me, I'm 78 and I love your work, but I'd love to buy one, but there's nobody to look at it, only me. He said, I've got lots of money, I've saved all my life. And I said, well, but surely you enjoying it would be something. He said, yeah. And I said, well, maybe you should, go online. You might meet a nice lady who'll come and spend some time with you. Maybe she'll cook you some meal. But there are people out there who are looking for company. And I've got to be honest with you, you're 78. You're not a looker. So it's probably going to be a gold digging kind of situation. And he said, oh, that would be lovely. He said, but the mother wouldn't like that. And I said, you're living with your mother and you're 78? And he said, no, she died 12 years ago. So here was a man who was still living his life based on what he thought his mother would think about him, and had saved all that money and was at an age now where really it probably was a bit late to have fun. Yeah. So I think when I met people like that, it really reminds me that I guess I was never going to be an accountant. I was never going to be a big saver, because I believe in what I do, and I believe that every investment I make is a good one, is a sound one, and it's an investment in my future as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So you scaled, and you scaled quickly, and the crash came.
Yes. And that was fairly well. It was after that, actually. I sort of managed to survive while after that. But the thing is, I always lived in the galleries that I was selling in. Now, that wasn't always strictly legal. You weren't supposed to. But renting an apartment and a shop was just too expensive. So for me, I lived in the galleries, and then for a while, I lived in the Gresham Hotel for 6 months. They asked me would I paint paintings they were doing the place up to sell, so they wanted me to do paintings for the hallway, for the bars, for the Elizabeth Taylor suite. And I said to them, can I stay for free while I do it? I think they were thinking more in terms of 3 weeks. 6 months later, I was still there, and 2 stone heavier, because they do a great breakfast. Yeah. But they don't allow dogs. So every night I would have to smuggle the 3 dogs in a bag, one at a time, past reception, praying that they didn't bark. Yeah. And one night I had the dog in the bag, and I was in the lift, and they were very well trained, they were good dogs. I was in the lift, and the Chinese lady got in, and I put the bag down, and the bag moved, and she freaked out. I think she thought I had a kid in the back or something.
Yeah.
And she was just
Yeah.
stuck to the wall until the lift got to her floor. But, I love my dogs more than anything in the world. And I think by the time I left, they probably had an idea that maybe there were dogs as I go by every evening. Good night.
Yeah, it's a blind eye.
Yeah, but but that also, it was after I left the Gresham that I really did think, oh shit, where am I going to live? What am I going to do? Because I've been on the housing list for years. And my friend Alan Dolan said to me one day, he said, Kevin, he said, you're homeless. And I was like, no, I'm not homeless. He said, well, where do you live? And I went, nowhere really. And he said, you need to go to the council and explain your situation. And I did. And they found me a place in Balbriggan. And I was there for a couple of years. And I now live up in Crumlin. But, it was what I remember about being in the hostel, the homeless hostel, was all I was thinking about wasn't how did I end up here. It was how the fuck do I get out of this place and never come back. And that for me was the motivation to get out, get painting, find ways to sell my work, approach people about exhibitions, etc. So I think there's a saying that in life shit happens. The only thing that's important is how you respond to it. And I think I had that built into me of like, right, let's get this show on the road. Let's get back to painting, being creative. And it worked.
Yeah. And I also think every experience, good, bad or ugly, is good for the canvas.
100%. 100%.
You can juice it. Juice your pain.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. Because people don't, sometimes with art, Francis Bacon is a good example where, the art world, or the very elite in the art world, they have this idea that the best art is art that's born out of trauma. And I more than qualified for the trauma part, but I do believe that you need to heal and you need to connect with people is so powerful that if you find a medium such as food, such as music, such as art, that's you helping them to heal. So the elites, I remember one time I didn't have enough money for canvas, but I couldn't stop painting, so I went out and got a lot of cardboard, and I painted on cardboard for a while. And the very wealthy people went, oh, it's so urban. I was like, I had to look up, what does urban mean? But it's weird, but they kind of want their artists to have gone through trauma and suffering, because in their mind, and they're right, it sharpens the creativity. If you look at Amy Winehouse, I think her second album, she sings this vocal live, and it's absolutely beautiful. I mean, it's perfect. And at the end, the engineer left in what she said at the end of it, and she sung this thing which was remarkable, and then she said, was that all right? And you're like, what? How the hell could you even ask that question? And it reminded me that most good artists only want to be great artists. They want to get better. They want to improve. And I love that about real artists, because a lot of people out there that call themselves artists, but, mummy or daddy or Auntie Mary's buying the paintings, but they've never experienced the highs and lows. They've had maybe a middle-class upbringing, which was about aesthetics. But when your survival is about feeding yourself, feeding your dogs, having somewhere to live, you become very, very clued into work and focus.
Yeah. So you had a big high, you had a low. Is it fair to say you're in a high now at the moment again?
Yes. Yeah. Well, I have three galleries in 2 countries. And that for me is a huge achievement, but also it's an incredibly exciting adventure, because all of it has happened as a result of selling my paintings. And where I am now is that I have such a broad ambition when it comes to art, and as the paintings get bigger, the prices go up, the clients become more they're more associated with big companies like Google and that. But for me, it's a strange thing to say, but I kind of feel like I'm only beginning, because it's the next painting that I'm excited about. It's the next year or two of painting. It's the new things I want to try. So it never gets stale for me, and I'm glad after all those paintings, thank God I still love it, because a lot of artists will find a particular style that works and they'll just keep repeating it. But very soon it feels like you're working at McDonald's. Whereas I experimented a lot, and as I did, I found different strands of people like the full colour work, other people, like we started doing limited edition prints last year, and they're incredibly popular. They're signed, there's 250 in each run, but what they've done is fill the gap between people who can't afford a painting
Yeah.
and people who still love your work and want to have something. And the quality is amazing. So, you know, there's no comparison really between a real painting and a print. But to see people, like just lovely couple come in yesterday morning to buy one, and they just wanted one of my prints for their home. And again, they had a photograph of the house. They showed me the house. And this is all something artists don't often get, because they're told, give your work to a gallery. They take 60%. You go away and we'll call you if something sells. Mm-hmm. But for me, the real joy is meeting the family, seeing the dog, meeting the kids. I mean, I've bought more paintings of children than you can imagine, because I love kids' paintings because they're not yet polluted with how the world should look.
Yes.
So who says the sky can't be purple? Who says the house can't be pink with polka dots? And in that, what they're doing is they're being really creative before somebody comes in and says, no, sky has to be blue. Mm-hmm. So, whoa, why not just do what you like? So these kids, what happens is when I go to the house, you'll say, which one's the artist? There's always at least one. And they say, can I see your paintings? And they come out, and I say, and they're always lovely. Some of them are really beautiful. And I say, okay, so now you see my painting, you see my name on there and the date. You have to put your name and the date on each one of these, and you have to give it a name on the back, and you need to put a price on there. At that point, the little ears pick up. They're like, price? So yeah, 5-10 euros. Okay. So I say, okay, can I buy that one from you for 10 euros? And they're like, to the mum, I said, okay. I said, yeah, it's okay. Okay, give them the 10 years. Those kids hang on to that tenner, and in their little heads, it's the first time that somebody has said, you're good enough. You don't need a teacher. You don't need somebody to give you value. You already have it. And those kids never look at art the same again, because they realize, wow, I can produce something that's valuable, and nobody's told me how to do that. And I love that for kids.
That's so good. And you know, as well, I think a lot of kids just get that idea very early that, like, I'm bad at art. Or
yes,
because that's that
because
one kid in the class who's good at art.
And
because, you know?
100%.
Yeah, so it kind of pushes anyone who's going to be more kind of contemporary, abstract, a bit different out of the equation, yes. I think, very early.
Yeah, it does. And it says, you have to, because the guy, Adi Antigua, who told me that I was a great artist, he said to me, the confusion people make is they think art is about technique. It's expression. And nobody can teach you how to express yourself. And I see kids who go to art college and they learn about old painters, dead painters, they copy painters. That's not really what, in my opinion, the clients that I have and the people that buy my work, they don't want to walk into somebody else's house and see their painting. They don't mind if it's the same artist, but they do not want to buy something that's considered to be mass-produced. Yeah. So I'm lucky like that. I never repeat myself. In fact, it'd be impossible for me to. The way I work, I couldn't repeat myself. I could do something similar, but no two are ever the same, and that's been a huge bonus.
Yeah. You said something to me before we started rolling. You said there's an art to selling. Mm-hmm. And I'm really curious about that. I wanted to ask you about that. So what did you mean when you said that?
Well, for example, when people come into Dawson Street or Quinta del Lago, and they walk in and they like the art, they're there. They might be from America, they might be from London, and they have, I would call them, a few red flags in their mind when they see a big painting. The first one is, oh, that's lovely, but how would we get it home? The second one is, what happens if it gets damaged in transit? The third one is, it's probably very expensive. So when I talk to them, and I know they're interested in the art, and I know that these flags are present, I will explain to them that we get specially made crates for each painting. One flag goes down. The cost of sending it to America would be about 1,500 euros, maybe 2,000. Another flag goes down, and we have a 100% success rate. No painting has ever been damaged, and if it was, we would immediately replace it. All the flags are down. And that's what I mean by the art of selling. And also, you know, if I start telling them about my achievements, it sounds like I'm blowing my own horn, but these days, I had a T-shirt once that said, Google me, bitch. Because, you know, people can now. And when they do, they inform themselves rather than me saying, oh, I've done this, I've done that. Because, so they go away. And often what happens is they've never heard of me. And they come in, they look at the work, they go away, they come back the next day and say, we're so sorry. We had no idea. We were up till 3 o'clock in the morning watching your videos. So that's what's changed in the world of art, is that people inform themselves, and it's so much more valid because it's like advertisements and newspapers. You just flip past them. But the editorial is read, and it's read as fact. So when they can go away and research you and see, no, you're the real McCoy, they immediately come back with the respect that wasn't there the day before because you're just an artist selling paintings. So that letting them do that is also the art of selling painting. And I think a lot of the art colleges would do very well to talk to somebody like me and come and say, listen, we might not like your work. We might think you've got a big mouth, whatever, but you're very successful. Would you like to talk to the kids and explain to them how to make a success out of their, how to make a career out of it? Because I say to the kids, if it's just a hobby, you're doing fine. Don't worry about me. But if you want to make a career out of it, you're going to have to get focused, driven. You're going to have to work at it every single day, and you're going to have to understand that marketing, promotion, hanging. Like when people walk into one of my galleries, they're all this beautiful dark railings colour. And it's matte because the paintings are very glossy, so I know the paintings pop on that. The candles are Joe Malone or Diptyque, so this smells like people's house because wealthy people don't buy cheap candles. You have fresh flowers always, beautiful plants, and you create an environment where they can experience the art, but also they come in, there's some music playing. Music's always very soft, and there's a reason for that, is because people like to have conversations. You know, it might be, oh God, they're bloody expensive, or it might be, oh, I don't like it, or it might be, I like this one. But if there's no sound, they whisper. So this is to allow them to have those conversations. And you're giving, you know, so they're seeing the paintings, they smell the beautiful aroma, they see the flowers, they hear the music, and it's almost like an extrasensory experience, because it's not just looking at paintings, it's looking at paintings that the artist has put in this setting because he believes this is how they look best. And that's a lovely thing. In Dalkey now, when we open on the 1st of October, again, someone said to me, you know, the Irish Times once tried to insult me by calling me, they said, this guy's more of a brand than an artist. And I thought, oh, thank you. I thought it was such a compliment, because, you know, to be recognised for what you do, whoa, that's a lot of artists would kill for that.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of artists that would say they don't like me, but there's not one of them that wouldn't swap places with me tomorrow. So the joy for me is always connecting with people, meeting their families, seeing the homes. You know, we bring paintings out. There's another business of selling art. If people are in the gallery and they're not sure about the painting, might be a couple. And I get this a lot, where people will say, well, we haven't agreed on anything for years because that's why all the walls are empty, but we both love your work, but we can't make up our mind between these 5 or 6. I said, don't worry, I'll send one of the boys out with the van, and we bring the paintings to your house. We let you see them in situ, and this works beautifully, because when you're in a gallery, it's a very sterile environment, and it's hard to imagine, would that painting be in the way of the sofa, or would the chandelier be in the way? But when you put it up on the wall at home for them to get a photograph of, there's no obligation for them to buy. They always do, but the minute they see it, they go, oh, that's it. Same way that if it's not, they know straight away. And again, that's the art of the business of art. You know?
The business of the art of selling. That was a comprehensive answer. I like it. I'll take that. Masterclass. Final question. Here you are now. It's kind of a second act almost. You're back again after the crash. Are you doing anything differently this time in terms of money or holding on to your purse strings, or is it still, are you back to the Italian bed linen and the Joe Malone?
Yeah, 100%. You know, because like that character I told you about, that man, he really reinforced it for me, because it was one thing that he was still looking for his dead mother's approval, but when he said, I've got lots of money and I just wish maybe I should have had more fun. And I thought, well, that's not something I'm ever going to say. No, because, you know, life is short, and you have to value yourself, but you have to treat yourself. You know, scrimping and saving for what? And that's why maybe I've never bought property, because I've seen the effect it has, and the killing of the spirit it has on people. You know, they go from joyful and playful to worried. Especially got a couple of kids thrown in the mix. I always say when people come into the gallery with 3 or 4 kids, I think they're not going to be buying a painting. They're going to be paying for those little buggers for the next 25 years, and sometimes longer. People are moving back in home. So no, I found out about 10 years ago. I tracked down my real father. My mother was from Dublin, my father was from Nigeria. And he was a medical student at the Royal College of Surgeons. He was only there for a year. They got thrown out for selling dodgy prescriptions. But he, when I finally tracked him down, he was dead. But when I phoned his number, a guy picked up the phone, and I said, hello. I said, my name is Kevin Sharkey. I'm from Ireland, and I think Babatunde Kanigaji is my father. And the guy said, oh, not another fucking one. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, are you sitting down? I said, no, why? He said, well, I think you should. He said, you've got 15 brothers and sisters. I was like, my response was, are they all black? He said, of course they're all fucking black. What do you think? I don't know, I was in shock. So a couple of months later I met 6 of my brothers and sisters. Curiously enough, one of them, he's like a twin. I mean, it was just really weird because growing up in Donegal, I was the only black kid. There was no black people. And Mark is his name, Mark Gaji. A lovely guy, he's a cameraman for the BBC, but we look like twins. And I asked them about Babatunde. Was he artistic? They said, yeah, he used to draw all the time. But they said he was a terrible gambler. They said he arrived in Dublin with handmade suits, handmade clothes. He was driven around. They were a very wealthy Nigerian family that had a trading post. But he ended up selling hamburgers in Piccadilly Circus off a little, those trolley stalls.
Yeah.
But he gambled everything. And I wonder if I haven't inherited from him that mentality, because some people would say that I've gambled with everything I have, but I'm happy with how it is. I still get to be creative. I still get to make a living. And I know that if the arse falls out of the economy tomorrow, I'll be okay.
Yes, yeah. There's only today, and there's always tomorrow.
Exactly.
Super duper. Thank you so much, Kevin. I
You're
really
very,
enjoyed
very
that.
welcome. Thank you.